my name. It's Marty Hardin. I got started in filmmaking in college. I was actually working on a studio degree in painting. Had just had my second daughter. We had a video camera and they offered a video art class. I thought, oh, this will be easy. I can work at home and I don't have to come into the studio. What wound up happening was I discovered that the only time I could get into the edit bays was from midnight to like 6 a.m. So I wound up spending a lot more time than I anticipated, and I sort of got hooked, and that led into advertising, and it's just sort of continued on from there. Disneyland Dream is this wonderful film. I'm a big fan of ephemeral films. Archive.org is a great source. That's where I found this film. And it's basically a family film from the 1950s. There's a certain naive quality to that time period that I find very appealing. I found this, and it's someone who had found an old family film and then went back and narrated sort of what was happening. And it's done in that sort of stilted narration style that people tend to do. So I took that and then contemporized it. And I was also looking at exploring ways of working within the frame that's on the screen itself. That's been a long-running theme of mine. You know, does everything have to be full frame? Can we move things around on the screen? Does linear time have to really exist, or can we play around and manipulate that? So I'm doing things under this other framework. There's a lot of experimentation when I'm working. I will see either a fragment of a movement or I'll hear a fragment of a sound, and that will fascinate me. And sometimes I'll loop sound, but in this particular case, I loop the visual over, and in it, there's where the guy hits his head. And I kept shortening that down, and that sort of was the leaping off point. Then I started finding other things that would sort of go with that. Then also looking for just really interesting movement, but then sometimes that movement was in a small place in the frame. And so rather than working with that full frame, I decided to really get in on wherever that movement was and then amplify it or repeat it so that people could sort of see maybe what I was seeing. If not, that's fine, but there was just something about it that I had to work through. It's just part of the exploration process. The two feed each other, you know, and a lot of the exploration that I've done on my own in an edit suite or doing compositing definitely goes over into the advertising work, and then, or the paid work, that's another way to put it. And then the paid work also comes back and informs that. So there's sort of this, it's like a permeable membrane. There's no divider there really. It just sort of drifts back and forth. There's a lot of really interesting exploration happening now because I see the democratization of the technology and the cost going down. So you see people doing really interesting things. So yeah, you're influenced by what you see in pop culture and the mass media, experimental films, interesting films coming out of Europe. It's like any artist, you're influenced by the world around you. Take it through your own filter. Then hopefully you're making something new. The biggest fear I have is just basically duplicating what I see. I want to make sure that whatever comes in, I can affect what comes out so that it is different from what I brought in, so I can bring something to the process, and hopefully someone else will be able to do something with that. It was like when the digital SLRs came out. That was great, and you start, but then it's like suddenly, oh, you need a way to stabilize this, and you need a matte box, and then suddenly before you know it, it becomes this unwieldy thing, and it becomes more of a hassle to shoot. It's sort of like when I had another phone. I have a different phone now, I don't shoot as much, but when I had a phone that I could just quickly take a picture or quickly snap video, I was doing that much more liberally. But when it comes to actually having to really think about it as an image maker, I end up overcomplicating it. So sometimes I'm my own worst enemy when it comes to that. You would think that I would go out and shoot more, but I'm actually finding I'm shooting less. You hit on it earlier. It's like there's sort of that, I'm exploring how time works. It doesn't have to be linear. I'm trying to work within the frames of the construct of the frame to do interesting things visually, except not getting cheesy. You know, it's really easy to get suckered in by the technology, and suddenly you're doing like all these 3D rotations and movements, and it's sort of like in the early days of broadcast when they had like star wipe patterns and checkerboard and all that stuff, and people went nuts. And it's like, you know, really it comes down to it's either a dissolve or a cut, and it's a framed image. It's what to do with that. It's like I'm really experimenting now with like things going really wide and thin, or tall and thin, or not necessarily lining up, or whatever. It's an ongoing process. For me, it's almost like a moving visual collage. I'm trying to find something new. You're probably gonna see more work like this until I figure out what the heck it is I'm trying to do. Sound is extremely important, I think, because I typically work in an experimental way. The sound is equally important. A lot of times it's music. There's so much information that can be conveyed that I can't articulate, but music can hit the right emotional tone that can convey so much more information to support what it is that I'm trying to express. For me, sound, sometimes it's the dialogue, it's the quality of the dialogue. It may be one or two words that will catch my ear. Not so much in this particular case, because I tried to honor what was originally said by the narration. Visually, it was wide open, but sound was a huge consideration, and I spend probably just as much time working on either the music that underscores it, or if there's any narrative, to make sure that the narrative has the right balance with the visual. I'll go through, and it's like when I'm getting ready to work on something, I'll have more or less the desire to make something. I'm not looking for anything, and I will look at NASA's website, I'll look at archive.org, I'll look at places that are good resources for public domain footage. I'll play through, and then there's just always just something, and I can't put my finger on it. With Disneyland Dream, it was the combination of that Eisenhower era sort of, we can do it, an optimism, and they were very serious about it, and there was just something about that that spoke to me, and I just wanted to explore and start finding bits and pieces. It's a much longer piece, but I focused on the Disneyland part and sort of going from Connecticut to Disneyland, but there was a whole story about their life and the neighborhood they lived in, which could be its own separate piece, but ultimately it was sort of the awe and wonder of Disneyland that sort of drew me in. Once again, I would like to say thank you to TvFILM, because you guys give people like me a chance to have a format to show my work. A lot of times I make films that no one ever sees, and so it's nice just to have a place where people will look at it, appreciate it, and give me a chance to share it. So that's my big sort of what I would like to add.